monthly-ish live where we're getting together with some really awesome people that call themselves Bank and Yourself professionals and are allowed to do that. And we talk about what is on our minds and what we are thinking about. So glad that you're here. No, we did not coordinate our outfits today. All of it, even Brandon and I, we didn't see each other before we got dressed this morning. He went off to go to a men's breakfast and I got dressed without seeing him. And just so happens we got a lot of blue and then a nice complement of like an orangey peach that that's like the complementary color to green. Or to blue. I love it.
Yeah,
Um
Dan, what can you show me what's on your thing here? Can you look up? Does it have wealth
This is not
wisdom finance?
this is
nope.
this is not my company. It's not your company. It's actually Lafayette Life.
Oh,
So
nice. I've
yeah,
heard of those
Lafayette,
guys. Yeah,
good company.
Yeah, yeah. So as we're getting settled in here, just want to welcome everyone. People are starting to join us live as well, which is great. Brandon, why don't you do a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into the conversation?
yeah. So today we have been really talking a lot lately about just I don't know. Last month we were talking about uh, the banking system. We have all kinds of other things. Now, before I get into this, I want to introduce, as you notice, we have Mark, of course. Mark has been around in the banking yourself world for a long time. And he is, I don't know, pretty amazing. And what he does, if you looked up banking yourself, I bet you've seen his bald head somewhere around there. And then we have Dan Gross. Dan is an amazing guy. He is um, been doing this for longer than both Mark, Amanda, and I probably combined, and being part of the Banking Yourself system, has his own agency, and also a coach in this whole world of infinite banking and banking yourself. And so, Dan, I did not read anything from your bio. It's probably in the comments if you guys want to know more about Dan. Read the
That's all right.
comments
It's all
as well.
made up, anyways.
Yeah, um, but I think his picture is a little 10 years ago, 20 years ago. We got to get a older version picture of you. But
Yeah, I prefer to use my younger self.
yeah, yeah. So as we're going here, guys, don't forget, put a comment, like, put a chat. We want to hear from you and share this with friends. Kevin, I just talked to. I told Kevin I got to go. I got a live right now, and he's in Hawaii. So cool. Thanks for joining, Kevin.
And I do have to say, Brandon, we have to tell, like, just a couple hours ago, Dan was training Bank on Yourself professionals. Like, that's the amazingness that we have here on the live today. So this is a great opportunity. If there was ever a question you wanted to ask a person who trains other Bank on Yourself professionals and is also a Bank on Yourself professional, today's the day. Put that in the comments. Also, make sure you like and subscribe so that you see all these future lives as well as the podcast in between. And for those that are joining over on the Not Your Average Financial Podcast YouTube channel, thank you so much for being here too.
Nice.
Oh, and thank you so much, Dave and Carmen, for being here as well. I'm so glad to have you here and glad that you're meeting Dan and Mark. Thanks for joining us.
That's I think yeah. I was like Dave and Carmen. Didn't they um, rent our house?
Nope, different
That
Dave
was
and
different.
Carmen.
For
Different
a
Dave and
second, I was like, wait a second. Old coffee shop clients.
yeah. So we're going to jump in here. Any other housekeeping, hellos, introductions, stories to tell before we get into our very deep, awesome topic?
I don't know, Mark. You want to add anything? You're so you talk so much. I don't hear you. That's why. That's why he is so muted. We just put a mute on him. Nope. Oh man, we don't hear you.
Right.
There we
There
go.
we go.
There we go.
There we
Yeah.
go. We hear you.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Thank you. I'm glad that you guys told me to wear red today. Jerks. Just kidding. Love being on here with you guys. You guys are amazing. This is like one of my things I look forward to every month. So I'm glad to be on. And the topic today is going to be, I think, really thrilling. So I'm ready when you guys are.
Okay. Let's do this. So, if you're checking out the description, that's our outline. We're going to talk about these questions. So, I'm going to put the first question as a caption down at the bottom of our screen here. And here it is. How can you tell the difference between a properly designed bank on yourself type whole life policy? Maybe one of us needs to describe what that is first.
Can
And
we
a
can you go
knockoff.
back? It says get around people who've been through it. Is that it? That's all I see.
Oh, you're not seeing how can you tell the difference?
Nope, we just see get around people who haven't been through
I
it.
see it.
I
Okay,
saw it.
I think you're seeing something different, Brandon.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
There we go.
Okay. And
Yeah, we're
then
seeing it.
why
Yep,
is
I'm seeing
spotting
the correct question there.
Okay. And then why is spotting that difference important? We're not talking about Gucci bags or those kind of things where there's knockoffs, but it's kind of similar. Who wants to dive in first?
Well, I'll take
Okay,
a little
so
bit. Go ahead, Mark.
go for it, Dan. Yeah, Dan, I want to hear it first. I've got some stuff I want to share on my screen. As always, you guys know I'm big on that. But Dan, I got to hear it from the man, Dan the man.
I appreciate that,
Keep the
Mark. Thanks.
question up, please, Amanda.
Yeah, so the question is, how can you tell the difference between a properly designed bank and yourself type whole life policy and a knockoff? One of the things is a lot of people like to talk and they think about whole life insurance. When they think about whole life insurance, they're thinking about what we like to call perhaps a plain vanilla whole life insurance policy, not the bank on yourself type of policies that we're used to, utilizing in our own lives, as well as helping thousands of people around the country do the same thing. And there's a big difference when you have a plain vanilla whole life insurance policy. These are the types that actually attract most of the naysayers, the people who I like to say maybe they're not quite as informed out there, and an educated decision is the best decision. But this is the type of a policy where you pay a premium for a death benefit. It does, generally speaking, with whole life insurance, it will grow some cash values, but a plain vanilla whole life insurance will grow them very, very slowly over many, many years. And if we're thinking in terms of when is my cash value inside of my whole life policy going to equal the premiums that I've put in to date, in a plain vanilla whole life policy, your traditional whole life policy, it's probably going to be about 20, 25 years or so, maybe 20 years, I'll say, before your cash values eclipse the amount of money, cumulative premium that you've put in so far. So that's one of the things to kind of look out for. And obviously, as anybody who's followed us a little bit knows, we kind of flip this on its head, and we do something, we design it totally different and use some really cool riders and design it for cash value. So that's one of the things to look out for. And Mark, I'll kind of hand it over to you.
Well, you've done a great job, I think, already. That's a big part of this. And it really comes down to what is it we're trying to do with our money? What is the point? What's the purpose? And sometimes you need the old plain vanilla style, for example, if we're looking at just needing to do permanent like estate planning and things like that. But most of the people who come to you guys, what are they needing? What are you guys hearing from your clients when they tell you what they want their money doing for them?
They're wanting to do things in business, or they want to have access, or they want to be able to maybe do real estate, or I don't know. There's a lot of this idea of have my cake and eat it too is kind of what I'm thinking. But they want to be able to protect the future, but also think about how can I use my money now. At least that's what I'm hearing a lot.
Amanda, what about you?
Yeah, and I think I was actually talking a little bit earlier today with somebody, and it's like all the bank things you would normally do banking that make the bank's money and doesn't make me that much money, or like the client that much money. So every time borrowing money, every time saving money, and all the different variations of that to do that, to take on and have control over those banking functions so that I make the increases. I get the benefits from those, not pay a bunch of interest to a bank that I never see, except for maybe a tiny little bit that they put in my savings account.
Yeah, that's a big one. There are a number of differences between knockoff versions and bank on yourself. And I'll just give a bit of history here, and then I want to show some examples, and then I'll pass the baton back to whomever. There was really for over 100 years, there's been a loan provision against life insurance policies, really since the Civil War, so maybe even older than 100 years. And it came as a result of people not wanting to surrender or cash out their policy because they just needed a little money for a house down payment or what have you. And the insurance company didn't want people closing out their policies because they loved collecting premiums for life, and back in the day. So they instituted, Principal was the one that did it, if I remember right. They instituted a policy loan that allowed you to borrow as collateral. They used the cash value and allowed you to borrow from the insurance company that sum of money so you could keep paying your premiums. Hooray for the insurance companies. And you got to put that money back, and the cash would continue to grow and continue to grow uninterrupted. So this was a big project and a big deal, and it revolutionized the way many people made major purchases for generations up until we saw interest rates rising like crazy in the mid to late 70s and early 80s, when everyone really became more speculators in Wall Street, and might think of this as also the time that the 401k came of age and the IRA came of age. Was in as the passing of ERISA in 1974 really pushed people more broadly into the stock market. It's also just about when the boomers became of age too. So there's reasons why we haven't heard about Bank on Yourself. This is one of the big reasons, is we've really been nudged into other markets. But back at around that time in the late 70s, early 80s, a man named Nelson Nash was struggling mightily because he had a lot of variable interest rate mortgage debt that was adjusting to these super duper high interest rates. And he was on the bathroom floor praying, looking for an answer. And he says in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker, he says that he felt like a voice spoke to him and said, you have all you need to solve your problem, but you look at things the way everybody else does. And what that meant was, oh, wow, I've got this whole life policy, these whole life policies here that I could use to wipe out all those mean old snakes at the bank and become my own banker, in essence. Yeah. But I look at my premium as a expense, and I put in as little as possible into these policies as I possibly can get away with. Thus, I think about my life insurance the way everyone else does, which is why I cannot get past this major problem of all this debt that I now have to pay a lot more for. Because the interest rates, again, in the late 70s and early 80s, were doing what they're doing now, except they were up at whatever, 18% interest on some of these mortgages. Okay, so fast forward. He's written his book. He's on the show. He's like going to all these different workshops and speaking across the country, describing how he overfunded his life insurance to become his own source of financing. He wiped out all the banks out of his life, and he's telling the world about this idea called infinite banking. And then fast forward a few more years, and everyone else loves the concept so much that they start sharing the idea and throwing other nicknames out there that have, sometimes they followed him in spirit and in truth, and other times they were true knockoff brands. And I mean, how many times have you guys gone to the grocery store or whatever, and you've bought the knockoff brand, or you found something on Amazon? Like, I just bought what I thought were Apple headphones and little ear pods, I think they're called, but I bought them, and I plug them in, and I hear this beep beep sound, and it starts sending some sort of Bluetooth signal somewhere. I'm sure it went straight to an adversarial nation that shall not be named. And I thought to myself, this is not an Apple brand ear pod here. This is a piece of junk, and it didn't even work. I couldn't even hear anything through the headphones, and I couldn't return them either. It was a total nightmare, so I just threw them away. Right? I could not use what I thought was just going to be plug and play and enjoy the music. And that's what people want when they read the book by Nelson Nash. They are thinking, oh, I just need to get me one of those so I can do what he did, which is pay off my debts or send my kid to college or start my business or, buy your cars. So I'm going to hush for a minute. I do have some spreadsheets. We'll get to those if we get to those. But any feedback on the experience of terrible headphone purchases or knockoff brands from the original concept that Nelson Nash talked about?
Yeah, well, I'll talk for a second. I'll tell you what, I think, again, looking at the question and getting back to what, how can you tell that if it's a knockoff brand is there is a very specific way that we design these types of policies. And unfortunately, I have heard, numerous occasions where I'll have someone come to me and say, I can't do, I've got a policy. I bought it from someone and I can't do what you guys are telling me I should be able to do. And I take a look at what they have and just the specific design. Yeah, the person might have said that they knew a lot about infinite banking, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the poor client consumer ended up with something that was just not the right thing. So there is a way that we design these things. As you guys know, we have special riders that we use to maximize or enhance the cash values, and that's really what people are looking for the living benefits, being able to increase and supercharge those cash values and also have access to them at the same time.
And I would say some of this is that marketing thing. Buy term, invest the rest. That was a great marketing thing there. When we talk about, there's different methods, there's other people, and even right now in the social media world, because of interest rates doing what they're doing, there's a lot of um, I don't know, copycats out there. People were like, "Oh, I can make a lot of money," and I wonder if maybe in the financial world, a lot of people who said this is not very good 3 years ago, 5 years ago, are now selling the thing and saying, "Yeah, but you never figured it out because I do it in a really cool way," and they've combined this really awesome thing with what somebody said is IUL, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we do exactly the same thing except ours is better because it does this. And I see that a lot, and where we're like not on the same playing field, and not really sometimes still people are out to make money, right? And again, I'm all for making money and paying my bills. I think I've shared this before, but not really thinking about the client, or the client may also want quick returns, and they're not thinking about 4 years from now, 5 years from now. And I think us as banking yourself advisors and professionals, I'm wanting to think not just about them and how they can use their policies to make a good return, right? And something else. But what about second year premium and third year premium and fourth year premium? And what about if something horribly goes horribly wrong outside of the policies, or in general, or in the policy, for that matter, that then we end up screwing ourselves. And then they say, "Oh, all you people are the same." I'm like, "No, that's not. It's not the same." And that's
Mhm.
something I think about. It's probably in your spreadsheets, but
Well, you know what?
I bet you that's there.
It's about information. It's the information age, and it really is about education and information about what it is, as much as what it's not. And you
Hmm.
mentioned something that it's a lot of people just kind of want to get rich quick scheme, or are just in this looking real short term. Mark, you mentioned Nelson Nash. He was famous for being a forester in his by trade, and when you're a forester, you have to look 20, 30, 50 years out into the future, and you're making decisions based on that stuff. And you know that's what we should all be thinking about, is making our decisions now, smart decisions that will affect us 15, 20 years from now, in a positive manner. But it's all about information and helping the consumers understand what this is, what it can do for them, and also what it's not and what it can't do for them.
And I'm gonna let Mark jump in, but I was just literally talking to a client who is, or potential, 21 years old, 21-year-old that's talking through this, and I'm like, the problem is, why you're gonna have a hard time is because our world is all short-term thinking, and that's what caused us this situation that we're uh, in a lot of ways. But if you start thinking long range and reverse engineer and do your hard work now, you will be rich, because there's going to be needs for financing always. and you're 21 years old. Imagine locking your money into something that you can't access till you're 60 and you're 21. That's a long time. That's if I had known. And I'm like, I told my assistant after I got off the call, I was like, that kid is going to be really rich. As long as he keeps not chasing tomorrow's thing.
Yeah, I'll jump in there and segue to Mark, because I was having the same conversation recently too, where someone was comparing what I was showing them as a true bank on yourself type whole life policy with what I would consider a knockoff. And he was like, "How do I tell?" And I'll let you know, Mark, I pulled up one of the resources you have within the Not Your Average Financial community that's been part of one of your podcast episodes, where you made an infographic. It's kind of a dashboard. What does it take to have a true bank on yourself policy? And I didn't count the bullet points, but there's a lot of bullet points, a lot of criteria. I was like, you can't just look at the raw numbers. You have to look at all of these different criteria. And that was so helpful. So I hope that's part of what you're going to share, because it's not just one thing or another. What's the ratio of base to paid up additions? It's a whole suite of things that make the bank on yourself brand what it is. And I don't want to lose sight of that as we're like sharing stories and sharing things. So hopefully, I'm going to pass the baton to you, Mark. Please jump in.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And it is a lot like our smartphones or any nice technology you might have. All we want to do is just swipe and it works. You know, when I get into an elevator, I just want to push a button and up I go.
Or
But
down,
we don't,
depending on
or down if need be, but not fast. I don't want to tumble down. You know, I want to go to the right spot, and I want it to be a nice, easy experience as the user of this tool. But I know that there's a lot of engineering that goes into this little brick in my hands here, or that elevator. And I know that there needs to be people servicing that elevator and taking care to upgrade the software in my smartphone and things like that. And if I don't have that regular, I guess, that in assurance, I should say, that there's a nice plaque in that elevator that says this thing was serviced 2 weeks ago and it's doing great. If I see my uncle going in there to work on the elevator, and I know he's actually an accountant, I'm not getting in that elevator. Okay, so there was a lot of people who were starting to knock off the brand, you might say, of Nelson, and he did a great job as an evangelist for this concept. And I think the world should at least know that this concept exists. But there were so many people who were saying, "Oh yeah, I've got an insurance license. I should just go do that too. I can make a lot of money selling these policies this way." And like you said, there were lots of permutations and knockoff brands and people using the wrong company, people using direct recognition loans, people using paid up additions with heavy load fees on them, load costs on them, interest charged on the beginning of the year, not the end of the year. The pieces of the puzzle were not all there. Like there might not be a paid up additions rider, or the dividends might be a mess, or there might be a demutualization, like just happened by a major mutual company who shall not be named. All of these products are just, it's like bricking your phone, your smartphone. When you get the wrong product, I have a guy right now, he's got $800,000 across a number of different policies at one particular company. And his agent said that this was a, true policy. They were not bank on yourself professionals. They just used another phrase, another knockoff phrase that are out there. And he had 800 grand in all these 4 different policies. And the policies are all direct recognition. He was told that he could borrow from the policy and it would continue to grow as if he had not touched a dime of the money. Now, that's the definition of non-direct recognition loans. And that's what he thought he had until he called the service people at the insurance company and he got something in writing saying, "No, I'm sorry. You have the other kind, the direct recognition kind." Okay, so why does any of this matter? Is any of this, reasonably important? Well, yes, it is. Let me, if you don't mind, share my screen when you guys are able. Please bring that up and I'll show you. Here is just that infographic, Amanda, you were talking about. Now, this is sort of our pre-flight checklist that I look for. When an airplane takes off, they always follow a pre-flight checklist. Even if you've flown 1,000 times, you want to make sure that you're airplane is going through that pre-flight checklist to design a true bank on yourself policy. And Nelson Nash went to Pamela Yellen in the late 90s, early 2000s, as I understand the history, Dan. You can correct me if I'm wrong here. And they started working together to really protect the language of the words bank on yourself really means something. There's even a training program, and Dan, you're a success coach, and help out me, help Amanda, Brandon, a lot of the bank on yourself professionals to ensure that we are getting continuing education. Amanda, you mentioned Dan was just on a continuing education webinar teaching a lot of us more details around the bank on yourself strategy. This is not a get your life insurance license in 2 weeks and then start selling whatever you want to sell. No, this is it's the deepest education I've ever had in any financial, piece to the overall financial universe, let's say. I've never learned anything more deeply in the financial universe than I've learned from Dan and his colleagues at the Bank on Yourself HQ. So this is our short checklist of what it takes to be a Bank on Yourself designed policy. And I want to just point out one little piece, or two little pieces actually. One, are there paid up additions offered through premiums or just through dividends? So before I go show you my spreadsheet on this, do you guys have any feedback, or why does this one matter?
While you're thinking, I'm going to put the link. So on the Not Your Average Financial podcast, they shared the link, but it might not show up on all the channels for everybody to find this infographic in case it's too small on your screen. So I'm going to share it as well, and it should
And I don't know if it matters, but our videos are covering up some of the bullet points. I don't know if that matters for other people or not, but
that's why I was going to share it to everybody as well. So that should be out on the Facebook and YouTube, wherever you're watching this. You should find that in the comments now. Go ahead.
So, I'll tell you what, the question was, why are paid up additions important? And I'll just kind of add my 2 cents here. This is one of the foundations, really, of a bank on yourself, an infinite banking type of a policy. This is the rider that makes your policy, that supercharges your policy. This is essentially it right now. And I mean, you have to have that. And the question is, why is it there that it's good to have it as a rider instead of just as dividends? Because that gives you the flexibility to put more money in. Once you see how these things work, you're absolutely going to want to put, in my experience, a lot more money in. And you don't have that option if paid up additions is only offered as a dividend option.
Great answer. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. And again, I see our videos are covering up some of these numbers. So I'll try to keep it. Oh, wow. That was awesome.
Yeah, it just makes it smaller. So if you want to zoom in a little bit.
Sure, I'll do that. Okay.
You can tell we're live, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll keep this as brief as I can so I'm not droning on with numbers. But I know some people on video love to see their spreadsheets. So I'll do a quick walkthrough. This is what we call old-fashioned whole life insurance, where a 35-year-old is putting in 25 grand a year. And he's got, as you can see, zero cash value in the first 2 years. And this is I just want to set the stage. This is a Bank on Yourself approved life insurance company. And, running a whole life policy like this gives you zero cash value. So it's all the right companies. And it's got a company that offers whole life insurance.
And to be clear, you ran this illustration recently, not 20 years ago.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is this could be bought today if you wanted it today. And again, the company is correct. All right. So if you're looking for the best company, you could still end up with the wrong product. So, this product, as we're looking at it here, has no cash value in the first 2-3 years. It's got 50 grand after 5 years, after paying in, help me out, that's $125,000 and you've got 54 grand in cash value. Youch. All right. So compare that then. As you can see down the page, it does, the death benefit stays level at 2.6 million there. Now let's compare this, and I realize we're small numbers, so I'm going to zoom out without getting too small, I hope. Let's compare this now to a true Bank on Yourself designed policy. Can you guys see that at all?
Yep.
It's kind of small, I realize.
Small.
But here's the same numbers going in, 25 grand each year. But now we've got a 40-60 blend of dividend paying whole life insurance with a paid up additions rider. Again, same company, just designed differently. We just engineered the policy to have a lot more cash value early on. And notice by year 5, we've got twice as much cash value as the old-fashioned stuff, $100,000 versus $54,000. And oh, by the way, this is all liquid money here, going down the board here. In fact, I'm so impressed with this right here. It's actually going up faster than our contributions. Here it is doing $27,000. We only put in $25,000. So in essence, there's an increase greater than our contribution in that current year there. Now, yeah, there was still some cost of insurance in the first few years, but there's no such thing as a free lunch except the cheese on the wrong end of a mousetrap. So factor in your costs wherever you want to get them, whether it's a assets under management fee on a mutual fund or a couple of years of insurance costs. But as you can see, going down this page here, and I'll wrap up for a minute, the death benefit is even now growing, whereas this one was flat and level. Someone want to tell me, why is this death benefit flat while this one is growing? Why do you guys think that is? Yeah,
I'll
Dan,
take
the master.
Thanks
I'll go for
calling
it.
on me. I appreciate it. It's and I'll forgive the non-blue shirt too. Well, here's the thing: is when you have what's called a participating policy, your whole life policy. Participating means you will get dividends if the company issues a dividend each year. Very conservative companies. Each dividend, if you choose to have that purchase paid up additions. That's every time you buy a paid up edition, whether you're buying it with your dividend or with your premiums, it's a small chunk of death benefit that's paid up. You never owe another cent on that little slice of death benefit, and each time you do that, your death benefit is growing. So that's how this death benefit continues to increase. It's the structure of the policy, structuring it with these particular riders, and with the dividend option being chosen for the or paid up additions being chosen for the dividend option.
Love it. Does 99% of purchasers of Bank on Yourself policies probably don't care about any of that, but they need to know that Dan knows what he's doing when Dan builds one of these correctly.
Yep.
It's the elevator phenomenon. I don't care how many, tensile strengths are in that steel bar that's keeping me from falling. I just want to make sure I can go up to level 4 or whatever. So that's great, Dan. Anybody else have any feedback or ideas on this?
I was thinking about when is the age of this person when they started?
He was 35 when he started.
Thinking about they call this another thing of a rich man's Roth. Is that more than 6,500?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, he's a lot more than the amount you could put into a Roth IRA. Yeah, great point.
Anyway,
Randy.
I was just thinking, like, from as we think through this, as you work with a Bank on Yourself professional, something I am not a tax person. But we have to think about all those other parts of your financial plan and strategy. And sometimes we're thinking about 60-year-old you or 35-year-old you, and knowing the rules, not just in our little sandbox, but what are the rules around us and how can we use it, but also create more systematic wealth.
Love it.
Mark, I have one particular thing that I was hoping we'd touch base on today. And a big difference, I feel like, between true, like, diehard, love Nelson Nash, would do exactly what Nelson Nash does, and the Bank on Yourself professional is the use of term writers. And that can get really controversial in different groups. People have really strong opinions about it. And I know that's one of your bullet points under writers is, were any other writers available to accelerate my cash value? For example, a term writer. With this example, are you using a term writer? Why do we use those? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. In this case, you can typically find out if there was some sort of term writer used. If you ever see the death benefit take a slight dip in certain years, and I'm sure that if we dug deeply enough into this, I could give you that answer.
I'm thinking that's a 30-year term rider on a 35-year-old.
Yeah. You might be right. Yeah, it might be. It might be. I don't actually remember, Amanda, in this particular case, if I designed a term writer or not, but it's very likely that there was one. We typically like to use the term writer only because it allows us to lift that death benefit up for as inexpensive as possible. And Amanda, why do we want to lift the death benefit up?
Well, it helps us get more into the paid up additions rider without making the policy go over the modified endowment contract limit and thereby making it taxable. It's a very important thing. So it gets and getting more into the paid up additions gets the higher early cash value, helps the policy grow more over time as well. Um, and I think that's actually like super critical. I know one of the myths that's out there is when you have a term writer, the premium goes down after that term writer's off. And that's not true for all companies. It can be true, but it's not always true. But that's often a blanket statement. If you have a term writer, your premium
Mhm.
goes down after the term writer's off. I have a policy. I've turned the term writer off. My premium hasn't gone down. And I love this
Yep.
is I love this graphic. Please go ahead and share.
Oh, I'll just let you walk through it though, Amanda, because you brought this up, the term writer piece. So what's going on in this graphic?
Yeah, and by the way, this graphic is on the Bank on Yourself website. Maybe before we turn off today, I can put this out here. Pamela's put together like a genius of good structure page. That's a chapter of her book. And what you're seeing here in the pinkish is the all base plain vanilla whole life, like Dan talked about earlier. Then we've got the designed for accelerated cash value as the base and paid up additions. This is how Nelson would have traditionally designed the infinite banking type policies. And then we have the design for maximum cash value growth with the base, paid up additions, and term. And that is the true bank on yourself designed policy. And if you look at the numbers as you go, you will see differences in the cash value. Which one is the highest? Which one's the lowest? When does it break even? From where the cash value is growing by more. Some of those numbers are circled here. I'll put the link to where to find out more about that in the comments so people can go see the numbers bigger and analyze them.
Fantastic.
I think.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, I was gonna say I think Dan has something he wanted to share too.
I'll tell you, if you want to leave that up on the screen,
Oh, yeah.
there was something I wanted to mention about that for those who are nerds like me. I'm just a spreadsheet kind of guy. It's just kind of guy I am. I like to real dive into the numbers and all that stuff. On that graphic that you just had, that was something that Bank on Yourself added to the concept, was the addition of the term rider. And you can see by that last graphic was the effect of what the term rider did. And essentially what's happening is that you can your MEC limit on these is produced by the death benefit. And in order to lift up or raise that MEC limit to put more cash under the MEC limit inside your policy, you can do it one of two ways. You can increase your base plain vanilla whole life, or you can get the same death benefit by in an efficient manner by cheaply by adding a term rider on. It's the same effect either way. What happens is that by increasing that MEC limit and by adding more death benefit as a term rider in a cheaper manner, you've now freed up more dollars to use towards your cash value, and that's really the difference that you saw there. So, what was the graphic, Brandon, that you were?
Oh, I thought you had something you wanted to share. I don't know.
So I did a little bit of. Let me see if I could pull this up. Did a little bit of we're talking here about how do you know if it's a Bank on Yourself type of policy, or if it's why work with a Bank on Yourself professional, someone who really has been trained by the organization, who knows what they're talking about. And let me see if I can share. Do I click on there we go, share screen, choose window, boom, look at this technology. Now, can you see my screen here?
We can.
Okay, there's little charts kind of comparing the cost of life insurance, death benefit, universal life, and whole life fundamentals.
Kind of. It's a little dark. Can you zoom?
If you're watching this on YouTube, pay close attention to this chart because this is a big deal. So Dan, there's your intro.
So here, thanks very much. So here's what's going on is that there's been a lot of talk, and Mark, you did an excellent job a little bit earlier talking about really the history. How do we understand anything? Well, we can't understand, much about today unless we understand where today came from and what's going on today in the world, and of course anything. But we're talking about these policies, and a lot of times there are some people out there who like to say that it's this type of a concept, but it's not. They're not doing themselves any favors, nor more importantly their clients any favors, because they're using the wrong type of a chassis, the wrong type of a policy. So something that we're looking at here, this is what I was just kind of I went through a couple hours ago on a webinar that I ran, was what you're seeing here is this is strictly cost of insurance. We're just talking about cost of insurance. And for any given death benefit, a plain vanilla whole life, the cost of that is more. And that's where a lot of people like to knock that. That's the easy target. Well, why would you pay that for that death benefit when you can get it over here in this universal life type of a, indexed universal life or variable universal life, or just a straight universal life? We won't get into the differences there. But right now there's a big hullabaloo about this indexed universal life insurance that's out there. I'm seeing ads on TikTok and other places, about this stuff. And I just kind of scratch my head, and I worry, frankly, because I think a lot of people are going to get into something that's not right for them and won't realize it until it's too late, way down the road. So to sum up, if this is a little bit dark, I apologize. Again, we can send this out to everyone. On the left, on the I can't recall which is the X, and I think the X-axis is down here on the bottom. The age, you've got your age, and as you get older, the cost of insurance increases. And what we're seeing here with the blue line is the whole life. You start with a cost of insurance at whole life, and whether it's your first year, your second year, your 10th or your 20th or 50th year in the policy, it's the exact same premium for that base death benefit, base plain vanilla whole life death benefit. Whereas at the same age, same health, same gender, same health class, you can get the same death benefit a lot and pay a lot less out of pocket on universal life. But the important thing to understand is that with a universal life policy, any type of universal life policy, it's built on the chassis of what's called an annually renewable term insurance policy. What that means is it's an amount of insurance where you pay at this age whatever the cost is. The next year, the cost increases a little bit. The next year, the cost increases, and so forth and so on. Each year, the cost for that policy, that death benefit, it increases. So for the same death benefit, as you age, here's the cost of insurance. It's increasing and increasing, and it just gets exponential. The most important thing to understand about this is that you can't stop these costs inside those universal life policies. So a lot of times we use these policies to build a warehouse of wealth for our retirement years. And if you have this type of a universal life policy, you have to consider that when I want to start accessing my cash values for retirement income or for retirement purposes, for whatever I want in retirement, let's just say, whatever you're taking out of the policy is going to be further exacerbated by the costs that also need to be paid if you're not paying them out of pocket. And why would you? You're in retirement. You want to get rid of all your bills. So whatever's coming out is going to be further exacerbated by the costs of insurance. And this is actually a document where I have a annually renewable term. You can see the chart in there. You've got a plain vanilla whole life next to that. But I get into, here's your universal life. Here's what happens. So $5,000 of premium starts off with the cost of insurance, just the cost of insurance. And by the way, there are other costs involved with universal life. This increases, and you're paying the same $5,000. The UL is going into an interest bearing. It's an account that's a side fund that's based on interest rates. So that's what's being controlled by that. However, over here, let's see, age 60 and 65, I'm only paying $5,000 in here. Well, the cost of insurance itself, let alone the other costs, is more than that. So where's the other money to pay for those costs of insurance coming out? It's coming out of the cash values. That's what's going on. VUL, here's another one with this kind of horrible colored, line here. Variable universal life. The side fund is tied to your stock market. So when you have a side fund that's over and beyond the cost of insurance, that money's going into the stock market, and you can risk it and all that stuff, and it goes all over the place, up, down. You can lose your money. What's happening though is that as the same story, as the cost of insurance increases, it starts eating away at your cash values right when you need it the most. And here's an indexed universal life one. It's the story is the same no matter which one you use. You cannot stop these costs of insurance. So I just kind of wanted to throw those things out there, this is super important for people to understand. If they own a universal life policy of any kind, indexed universal life, or if they're thinking about it, get in touch with Mark, get in touch with Brandon or Amanda. We can help you out and help you understand what you're getting into.
Thank you, Dan. That was amazing. I'm going to stop sharing your screen because I want to use that as moving into the second question, which we got to get through these next two questions a little more faster than the first one. They wanted to make sure the claims of the lookalikes that are not accurate and maybe even dangerous. So some like claiming that it's non-direct recognition when it really is direct recognition, like Mark was talking about earlier. The claim that you can use any type of UL policy for retirement income when we see a lot of them approaching lapse pretty quickly once people are in their 60s and 70s and it's not really there for them. There's all kinds of things that are actually super dangerous about these. Who wants to jump in there and keep going with the list?
Can I add, one of the things that I've thought about is, really as you work with somebody like us, is we have the hindsight of being able to see other clients that we have to deal with, and thinking about the 21-year-old that could be lured into this. And unfortunately, I've worked with 70-year-olds too that thought they got this at the right time and did all the right things, and they didn't look at it. They put it in the drawer and they hand it to me, and I'm like, "Oh, do you know this?" And they're like, "Oh, I thought." And unfortunately, we see this all the time, and it gets a little frustrating almost to have the same conversation and having people say, "Yeah, but," and I even had one that he bought one and he would not. I had the illustration. I showed him. I said, "This is what it's going to do. Here's what it says here on your paperwork," and he would not budge because he already had invested or done the money, put the money in. That he was like, it's not going to do that. I'm like, this is what it says. Okay, all right, whatever. It's your money, $1 million that may be gone. Go for it. But unfortunately, I see this on the back end, and I don't want to see it on the front end. And people will say, "Yeah, but that's different," or an agent will come on here and attack us or whatever. But the problem is, I've seen things. Dan has seen things. Mark has seen things. Unfortunately, we know how the car works a little bit.
Well, I think the important point here, Brandon, is you're exactly right. And if you have a universal life-based policy, just ask your agent or the company. Just go to the company and ask for what's called an in-force illustration. That's it. That's just ask for one. And if you don't understand what they're talking about, you can give one of us a call, and we're happy to explain it to you.
Yeah, I'll say there's a couple of claims that are out there, and you guys can maybe help me fill in gaps that I'm forgetting. But if you hear the insurance agent tell you that this is an investment, that's probably a red flag, because whole life insurance is not an investment. It's a life insurance product that has a savings component to it that I think beats a lot of other savings strategies, but it's insurance. It's not an investment. If they call it, knockoff names to real retirement accounts like the 401k, I'm not going to name any particulars out there, but it's all over TikTok and YouTube and more. They'll call it a knockoff name to the IRS tax code. Okay, if they're calling it like a secret account, like no one else really knows about this. Hey, you're getting in on the ground floor. These are red flags. At least you can still do your due diligence. There are claims that I've seen where they'll say, "Hey, you should borrow from your policy to go buy another policy.
Mhm.
Have you guys heard that
Yep.
one?
Dangerous.
What's dangerous about that,
It's
Dan?
well, we work in the world of
But and I hate to interrupt you here first, and I'm so sorry. Why is that a cool idea? First, why would someone tell you to do that? And then two, why is it dangerous?
first of all, the idea behind it is that you're kind of you're borrowing from one policy and letting this thing ride while you're kind of using your you're using your cash values, your premiums, redirecting those to somewhere else and now all of a sudden you've got multiple policies. Well, there are too many risks. I've looked at this from every angle personally, and again, I'll just say this is my opinion,
Mhm.
but I've looked at it pretty darn close many times through the years, and there are too many risks involved in doing something like that. It's leveraging, and the bottom line is, what's the worst case scenario that can happen? You're borrowing from a policy. When you borrow, there is a loan outstanding. And the way that these work is if your loan gets too big and you're not paying off at least the interest or something like that, the thing could lapse. So I've seen this happen too many times where people have tried to institute this strategy, and once again, pretty much when it's too late, they realize that it was the wrong thing to do, and now they're kind of up the creek without a paddle, and it's really hard to recover when you do something like that.
Thank you.
What
Yeah.
I'm
and
actually, I was gonna say I'm a little more cynical than Dan. I think the main reason people do those is the agent who's selling it now gets to sell 2 policies and make double the commission.
Yeah, it's like those Matryoshka dolls, those Russian
Yep.
dolls, borrow from one policy. You get the growth in the first policy, you go buy a second policy, but it's a little smaller, and now you have a loan to pay back, and then another loan, and then another loan. And it technically works, but it's more like the Russian mob is out to get you, because at some point all those policy loans become due, you might say, or it's not like they're going to come like repo your life or something. Not that kind of Russian mob. But they will lapse all your policies, and then you'll lose all your money. And the agent walks away with commissions. So you're exactly right.
Good.
I just wanted to quickly share one other thing, but it would be a hard right turn. So go for it, Brandon.
as you're going into that, is what about using the policy? You put in an amount, a big amount in, and then somehow the banks pay the rest. Have you ever heard of that? Banks pay for
Yeah, premium financing. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
or something. I've
No?
heard different methods. Like, why is that?
Yeah, again,
Is that
it's a
good?
strategy that
Or-
it's a strategy that can work. It's the idea where you pay the interest on a bank loan, and the bank pays your premium for you. But I think it's way oversold. Again, it's sort of like telling a 4-year-old, instead of getting into his high chair, he's going to be given the keys to a sports car. You may not need this incredibly giant premium. It just comes down to the numbers and what your goals are and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of people pushing premium financing that sure makes great commissions for the agent, but may not be in your best interest as the buyer, right?
I think I'm seeing
Um,
some of those lately, and I'm like, but what if the rules change?
Or interest rates, so go up
Yeah.
at the bank.
Those kind of
So there's a lot there. Yeah. So there's a lot of people. We've talked some about how the loans work on this, and for those that aren't aware, bank on yourself type policies grow even when you borrow against them. And this is a beautiful thing when it comes to buying things like cars and vacations and real estate investing and things like that. And we've done whole podcasts on how that works and how that looks. I see our time is short, so I figured I'd have a little fun and show you what it looks like in retirement too. Is it okay if I go ahead and share my screen one more time, and I'll keep this brief? So again, I need to hit the share button here. There we go. Okay. So the idea with our infographic was to put it all on one page. And again, work with a bank on yourself professional, and you don't have to remember all this stuff, right? You just have to get into your elevator and up you go. But one of the keys to our pre-flight checklist is, do I have a non-direct recognition loan, which allows the cash value to grow even when I borrow against it on the entire amount? Or is it direct recognition, which stops the growth when I borrow from the policy? Well, that sounds like a arcane, not so important little detail, but let's take a look at how it impacts a retirement. Here's a guy who's 65, and at age 65, he's got $1.9 million in cash value. Let's just, for simple example, say that he has a 5% loan, and the growth rate, or the dividend rate in this case, is 5%. And let's say he's going to take out 120 grand a year as a supplement to his retirement income. In this case, it essentially washes out, and he's out of money at age 81. Now, in essence, he pulled out $2 million, which is essentially what he had. What does this mean? It means when you have a loan rate and a dividend rate, and you stop growing your money when you borrow the money out, it's essentially washing clean any growth you might have. And it's essentially, you just pull out the 1.9. He's able to scrape together $2 million after just a few years. What's 65 to 81 is, let's see, 75, 80. That's like, what is that, 16 years, something like that?
Yep.
Now let's contrast that with all the same numbers, but now it's non-direct recognition. Look at this, 3.3 million is what he can pull out. How is that possible? Well, the loan rate's the same, dividend rate's the same, the cash value is the same. He's still 65. He's still pulling out the same income. The difference is his policy continues to grow on the entire cash value as if he hadn't touched a dime of the money. This allows him to enjoy income all the way to age 93. And that's a full 1.3 million more dollars just because of one little line item in the loan details on that contract. So small details matter when it comes to your whole life insurance policy's design.
That's so important. And I do want to make sure I need to share my screen. It's not a YouTube live with Amanda unless Amanda shares my screen too.
Let's do it.
Just wait. When we do our live at some point, we have a vibe board that we're going to do all kinds of.
Yeah. So here is the Bank on Yourself Professionals website. I put this link in the chat. We've gone really quickly here. We've just, even though it kind of seemed deep, it's just the surface of what you could find in terms of all the things that you might want to know. But what I love about what Pamela's written here is she does a really great job of spelling it out in detail, what we go through, what we do, as well as the untrained financial representatives and what they might say to you and what you might want to know before they say it to you, or to bring back to them, or better yet, come talk to a Bank on Yourself professional. So we've talked about a few of these as we've gone today, but you can reread it here. You can see our awesome picture of a bunch of us Bank on Yourself professionals up in Troy, Michigan, which or Rochester, Michigan, where we all were about a month ago, less than a month ago. And there's like so much more material on this website than we have time to cover. I invite anybody and everybody, go play around with bankonyourself.com, read things there, come back to the chat, share what you find there, all those things. Absolutely need to like send people like the person who owns the copyright, the trademark for Bank on Yourself, and what she would say about this, because she is the ultimate like not the ultimate professional.
Grand Poobah,
right? Like
the guru. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
didn't want to sign off here before putting that out there.
And
Yeah, Pamela's changed my life, my family tree's life. So
and to be clear, we're not wearing blue because of Michigan.
No, no. Oh,
So
wait.
yeah, just to be clear. just wanted to put that out there for everybody to know before we wrap things up.
So I have one last question then. How people listening, they have a question. How do they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah. Our website.
How do they get in touch with you, Dan?
I don't speak to people. No, of course I do.
We're at wealthwisdomfp.com. You can check out that website, see what we have to share, and click the discovery call link to. We love talking to people all the time. We're not hiding, and we don't charge for our time either. How about you, Mark?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great one. Go check out their podcast as well, Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. And we're at notyouraverageFinancialPodcast.com, where you can find 300 plus episodes that dive deeper into how these strategies work and what makes Bank on Yourself so compelling. So thanks, guys, for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Be sure everybody you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to the Not Your Average Financial Podcast YouTube channel so you don't miss our next live and all the fun stuff we do in between to help you break through to a smarter, more stable financial future. Thank you.